So good morning, everybody, and welcome to this first EMA Veterinary Awareness Day. Actually, it's 2 days because we will continue tomorrow, but we'll start with the first day. And I'm happy to see that there's so many participants online and also people in the room here. In the morning program, we'll see a number of introductions, but first I would like to give the floor to Emer Cook, Executive Director of the European Medicines Agency. Emer, please, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Ivo. And indeed, it's really great to see so many people in the room and to understand that there are so many people online as well. As Ivo just said, I'm Emer Cook, and for those of you who don't know me, I am the Executive Director of the European Medicines Agency, and it's a real honor for me to open this event. It's the first Veterinary Awareness Day that we've had, and I actually found this very surprising. I was almost going to go back to colleagues and say, "Are you sure?" But I trust them. They tell me it's the first Awareness Day. It is the first Awareness Day. And I think this shows how important we see that the work we do is visible. The work we do on veterinary medicines is visible in terms of to all stakeholders who are actively involved. We have had a very strong visibility in the area of human medicines, particularly over the last couple of years with COVID, and actually this has meant that we've thought a lot about our visibility, our public presence, how we relate with stakeholders, how we engage better. And I think it's really time now that we use our shift in focus now to shine a spotlight on our work on veterinary medicines, because veterinary medicines are about the prevention, control, diagnosis and treatment of diseases that affect the health of domestic and wild animals, as well as the prevention of a transmission of animal diseases to people. And with the interfaces that we see between animal health and human health, I think it's very important that we have this that we make sure that we're looking at the interconnections. But of course, the field of veterinary medicine itself and its scope is quite broad, and it represents not only the well-being of pets, their owners and farmers who utilize animals, but there are also a wide range of public policy issues that impact all of society. And I'm sure you all are aware that we've had a revised veterinary medicinal products regulation now for over a year. In fact, when I joined the agency almost 3 years ago, there was a huge amount of work being done in preparation for this new veterinary regulation, as it was called, the NVR. I think we now just call it the VR. But the key objectives of this new piece of legislation were to really see how, as a European community, we could increase availability and access to safe and high quality medicines for vets, farmers and pet owners in order to treat and prevent animal disease. There was also a strong focus on reduction of administrative burden and the idea of providing better incentives for pharmaceutical companies to develop new and innovative veterinary medicines. And particularly, there was a focus on micro, small and medium-sized enterprises, or SMEs. And then, of course, a strong focus on new and enhanced rules to keep antimicrobials, including antibiotics, effective based on a One Health approach for the benefit of animal and public health and for European citizens. So, as I mentioned, we've had a huge, we've We've involved our stakeholders in all of our activities in the veterinary side. We've involved the national competent authorities, the marketing authorization holders, and veterinary healthcare professionals. And these stakeholders have helped us in defining the new ways of working, but this is the first time that we've reached beyond the stakeholder group to really think about what this work means for the wider European public. So that's why this event, the first Veterinary Awareness Day, aims to provide information on these activities to a wider audience. And I'm delighted that we've over 600 participants registered, which shows the immense interest in our work. And I think it's a really exciting program. It's structured around 5 sessions, starting with the new veterinary medicines regulation 1 year into operation. And then the second session focusing on combating the emergence of antimicrobial resistance. After that, you'll have a choice to attend one of 2 parallel sessions. One of these sessions will be on the activities to limit the impact of veterinary medicines on the environment. And the second one will discuss the impact of animals on society, include information on our activities to ensure consumer safety. Tomorrow, we will start again with parallel sessions on animal welfare and our collaboration with academia. And then finally, the awareness days will finish with a joint session, which gives an overview of the contributions of EMA and the EU network to veterinary science and regulation. So it's a very exciting program. I hope it will stimulate you to get more involved in what we do, to ask questions, to stimulate a fruitful exchange. So I'm delighted to wish you a very successful Veterinary Awareness Day or days. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Emer, for being here and for opening the Veterinary Awareness Day. I know you need to move on to your next meeting, so we're going to execute a little ritual dance here. So Eva can move in this direction, Emer can move out, and then we'll take it on. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
And whilst Eva is moving, and I would like to introduce her. Eva Zamora is head of unit at DG Sante, responsible for managing my division at a more distant way, managing veterinary medicinal products. Our paths crossed in 1999, but we didn't realize it at the time. So it was a missed opportunity. But then Eva joined in 2020 to become the head of the union. And had to wait until 2022 before we actually met, because this was in the middle of COVID. We've been working together a lot over the past 3 years on the implementation of the vet regulation, and we still are to make it all happen. So with that short introduction, Eva, I would like to give you the floor for your presentation. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Ivo, and good morning to all. So first of all, I want to express my sincere gratitude for your invitation to speak at the first EMA Veterinary Awareness Day. It's truly an honor and a privilege to be among the speakers for this significant occasion. And for me, this represents a unique opportunity and platform to address to a wider audience. And if we can go to the next slide, please, to explain to all of you, not sure if the next is slide, yes. Who are we in the Commission? What and how are we doing things? And why we are doing things? And for this session, why a new legislation on veterinary medicinal products, which is so important for all of us. So if we can move to the next slide, please. And there is some animation here. So if you are so kind to start, well, the European Commission represents the EU common interest. So we are working for all. It's made up of one president, so my boss, Ursula von der Leyen, I'm sure you all know her, and a commissioner from each EU country responsible for a specific topic. We propose new laws and programs, and this is important for you to understand the decision making, and is elected by the European Parliament for 5 years. So we are about to finalize the current commission, and we will have a new one next year. And it manages the EU policies, and we do also manage the budget. If we can go to the next, well, of course, we are the guardian of the EU treaties, and we are in charge on the enforcement. Going to the next slide, please. You can see in a nutshell what is the role of the European Commission. So we do have basically 4 main roles: the legislative role when we are proposing legislation to the Parliament and to the Council. We do have an implementing role when we are putting into effect the EU policies, a legal role in relation to the enforcement together with the Court of Justice, and a representative role in the international level. The Union is represented by the European Commission. We are organized in general services, so we do have a Secretariat General, we have a DG dealing with communication, and we do have 22 DGs dealing with the policies, and there is my DG Sante, and we are working together with very important agencies like the European Medicines Agency, the European Food Safety Authorities, but we do also have 5 DGs dealing with external relations like DG Trade, or the DG dealing with neighboring and enlargement negotiations, plus internal services controlling ourselves, like, for example, the legal service, which is scrutinizing everything, the DG dealing with budget, the interpretation, because of course we need our legislation in 24 official languages, plus other executive agencies. So if we can move to the next slide, please. Here we have who does what. I understand that explaining the EU decision-making perhaps it's not the more interesting topic of your lives, but nevertheless, I promise to be very, very brief. But it's also important that you understand how we do things and who is doing things if you want to be part of this and if you want to have a say. And all the stakeholders and citizens, you have a say when preparing EU legislation. So how our regulation on VMPs was born? So as I said at the beginning, the European Commission has the right to propose the legislation. If the Commission is not proposing legislation, there is no legislation. Of course, someone can be pressing, pushing, and trying to influence the Commission to present a law, but we do have the right of initiative. So our proposal is sent to the co-legislators, who are the European Parliament and the Council of the European Union. And here we have represented all the interest of all the European citizens in the Parliament, and also the member states are represented in the Council. As you may understand, it is not very common that the Commission proposal is immediately adopted, and it's not common that the Commission proposal is rejected. The normal thing is that it is amended, and we do enter into the discussions between the different institutions. And if this is agreed, we have a new law. So this is how the new VMP regulation was developed. So to illustrate with an example on how complex and long this procedure can be, Commission submitted the first proposal on the VMP regulation in 2014, and it was only adopted at the end of 2018. So we spent 4 years of discussions in order to have our regulation finally adopted and published. If we can go to the next slide, please. Here you have the continuation, because it is not only about to have a regulation. The regulation contains empowerments to the Commission to implement the regulation. And these empowerments can be an obligation, or it can be optional, and it can be with or without deadlines. In the case of the VMP regulation, for example, we got 25 empowerments in order to adopt legal acts. So the Commission, again, under these obligations and only under this remit, because in the Commission we cannot do as we want. We can only put in place the empowerment that it is given. Even if we find that it is a good idea to do that, it is not possible. So within this empowerment, we are proposing legislation. This legislation, it is in the form of a delegated act or an implementing act. The difference here is the different actors who are involved in the decision making, and I will not go into the details because otherwise I can spend the entire day with the procedures that we have in the Commission. And then something very important for me to highlight is that in science we trust. Most of our legislation is based on the scientific advice, which is provided by the European Medicines Agency. And this is provided following a mandate issued by the European Commission within the remit, again, of the empowerment that we have been given. And here is very important to have the involvement of the academia in all this. And I'm very pleased to know that today we have many representatives from the academia, and also to mention that the legislation can be revised. And normally it's been revised, taking into account new developments in the scientific area. Going to the next slide, please. Let me go a bit more to advance and to understand what we are doing in DG Santé. We are the DG dealing with health and food safety, and our mission is making healthy and safe EU citizens the engine of a sustainable economic growth. So what does this mean in practice? What is our real mission? Our mission is to improve and protect human health, to ensure that all food and medicinal products are safe, and to protect animal health and welfare and plant health. So why is veterinary care important, and how our regulation on veterinary medicinal products contribute to these general objectives? If we can go to the next slide, I will try to explain all this to you. If you can continue, so we have all the elements here. Fantastic. So here you have some of the aspects on why veterinary care is important. Of course, I'm not going to touch upon all of them because otherwise I will not leave other speakers to talk, and I'm sure that they will be touched more in detail in these 2 days. But the role of the animals in the society, as you know, is essential. It is essential in the area of food production. They are a source of high nutrient value to all of us, and we need to ensure that also food security, and to ensure that our animals are healthy, free from diseases, and that we can eat. This is very important to all of us, and this is something that we are doing on a daily basis. So this is quite evident. But there are other areas where this is becoming more and more important. So, for example, companion animals, as you know, pets by many of us are considered as part of the family, and we want to ensure that they are in good health, and the well-being is also our well-being in a way. On top, now we have a growing diversity of pets, for which we need also specific veterinary medicinal products. So everything is linked to that. Of course, sport is super important for us, and this is not something new. So apart from the new types of sports that are emerging, like this doggy dancing, yeah, there are now many new sports. I'm not familiar with all of them, but there are a lot of them. Horse riding was already an event, for example, in the Greek Olympic Games as early as 664 before Christ. So you see, the role of a sport, it was already there before we were all born, and many, many millennia ago. But work and assistance is still something very relevant in our current society. The work of animals, and I mean, it's in many different activities, and we have also some atypical species used for work. For example, rats now are used to detect mines. There are military dolphins, etc. So we need to ensure that they are well cared, that they have the relevant medicinal products in order to ensure their health. And of course, it is also essential the contribution of animals to biodiversity. We need to preserve the wildlife. And, there are many programs related to breeding, disease management for this species in order to have conservation of the relevant species. Of course, everything has an impact in economy, but also in trade, and animal welfare. It's central for both. I would like to touch upon a bit more in the concept of One Health, and I would like to mention some of the elements where it will be also discussed during these days, and in particular for zoonotic diseases, antimicrobial resistance, food safety, the environment, and the non-communicable diseases. So, well, the concept of One Health, which is used today very often, it is not something new. Already Hippocrates, and also well before Christ, he wrote that the public health depends on a clean environment. And you can see a quote of the 19th century: between animal and human medicine, there is no dividing line, nor should there be. You have also the logo of the veterinarians in one member state. I'm not sure if in others, which means livestock hygiene is the people health. So this concept, which looks now so modern and so innovative, in reality, it is not. So going to the next slide, please. Let's start with the zoonotic diseases. And if you can push one more, we will get some data on the screen. So I'm sure that you are very familiar, or you know at least some of the zoonotic disease that you can find on the screen. For you, the WHO, so the World Health Organization, estimates that 60% of the known infection diseases and up to 75% of the new or emerging infection diseases are of zoonotic origin. Zoonotic diseases are responsible for an estimated 2.5 billion cases of illness and 2.7 million deaths worldwide each year. So, as you can see, the importance of veterinary medicine and veterinary medicines goes very far beyond the animal and the welfare aspect, but we are talking about the protection of human health. And proper veterinary care and disease monitoring, control, and eradication are critical to protect our health. Moving to antimicrobial resistance, which is in the next slide. If you can push one more, please. Yes, thank you. So as you know, tackling antimicrobial resistance is one of the top Commission priorities. You can see on the screen the definition of what it is antimicrobial resistant, which is, by the way, contained in the regulation on veterinary medicinal products. Antimicrobial resistance is responsible for more than 35,000 deaths a year only in the European Union and in the European Economic Area. And it has also a very significant cost in the healthcare systems. And the World Health Organization has declared antimicrobial resistance as one of the top 10 global public health threats. I'm not going to enter into the details of the mechanisms of transmission of antimicrobial resistance. There will be an ad hoc session But just to tell you that some people think that antimicrobial resistance is just coming by the food of animal origin that we are eating, but this is much more, and it is closely related to the use and misuse of antimicrobials. So I will let you know later how our new legislation is addressing antimicrobial resistance. So moving to food safety, thank you. As you know, in order to have food safe for all of us, the food has to come from healthy animals, free from diseases. And in the case of veterinary medicines, we have a very important aspect, which is to establish maximum residue levels of veterinary medicinal products in food in order to ensure that our food is safe. To have access to nutritious and safe food is key to sustaining our life and to promoting also a good health. To give you some data also produced by the WHO, unsafe food containing harmful bacteria, viruses, parasites, or chemical substances causes more than 200 diseases, which it is also an important element to continue saying why and how it's so important to preserve the health of our animals and to take care of them. And going to the next one, of course, we cannot, the next slide, please, we cannot forget about the environment. And in the concept of one's health, the environment is essential. So we should avoid the expression of residues in the environment by all of us, by humans, by companion animals, by farming animals, to avoid any inappropriate disposal, and also to prevent that in the manufacturing process we have residues in the environment, and we have to do every effort to prevent the spread of pathogens in the environment, because it is also an important component in the spread of antimicrobial resistance. And going to the last slide on this, the non-communicable diseases. As you know, more and more animals are used in therapies for diseases such as depression, anxiety, autism. They are also used in the detection of carcinoma. They are diabetic assistant dogs, and they are essential in many aspects, which are not always well known by all of us. In summary, veterinary care is important because it not only protects the health and well-being of animals, but has much broader implications for human health with the widest context, food safety, economics, research, and conservation efforts. So let's try to understand and go one step further in the next slide in the EU legislation. So we have some specificities of the veterinary medicine market, which is very much fragmented. While it's not a perfect division, but we do have food producing animals, we do have companion animals, and they have different specificities, and of course they are all multi-species. In the case of food producing animals, it's more cost sensitive, and high prices are not affordable by farmers. And of course, we have to live in a world where we have to compete not only at the level of the union, but also at the international level. In our case, as I mentioned, we need to establish maximum residue limits for our food, and this increases the cost of the authorization. We have withdrawal periods to ensure that all the residues of certain drugs are not in our food, and there is also an impact in the environment. And for companion animals, there are much more things, but I mentioned that the prices are more affected by the consumer's purchasing power. Very quickly, to continue with this topic in the next slide, you can see that, well, of course, some veterinary formulations are different to the human ones. In our field, there is a lack of reimbursement. We have also many issues because we have small markets for rare diseases, and for a species where the number of animals is quite small. And we need additional investments by the industry to extend the authorization of veterinary medicinal products from one animal species to another. So to have a good legal framework to make all this possible and to ensure that medicines are available, it was key. So let's continue and let's see in the next slide, please, the history of veterinary medicine regulations in the Union. So let's start with the Treaty of Rome, already in 1957, where the European Economic Community was established. And for you to understand the importance of medicines, very short after the creation of the Union in 1965, we have for the first time a common legislative framework on medicines covering both human and vets. And it established the fundamental principle that medicinal products need to be independently evaluated and authorized before being placed on the market. This common legislative framework was established after the thalidomide disaster in the 50s. So we have now almost 60 years of EU regulations for veterinary medicinal products. In 85, we have legislation on coordinating national decisions relating to veterinary medicinal products, a few years after the humans. In 86, we established a consultation procedure for innovative products, which was a pre-runner of the centralized procedure. And in 93, the centralized procedure. And very importantly, in 1995, the EMA was created. So they are much younger in the EMA that we are in the Commission, because we were born in 57, while they are much younger, as you can see here. And well, I'm sure that Ivo will give you more explanation, but basically EMA was founded to guarantee the quality, efficacy, and safety of the centrally authorized human and veterinary medicinal products, and much more. And in 82, we have a directive called the Community Code relating to veterinary medicinal products, which is, if you want, the predecessor of the current VMP regulation, which was published in 2019. You can go to the next one. And it is applicable since January last year. So going to the next slide. So why a regulation on veterinary medicinal products is essential? So you know that a must is to ensure quality, efficacy, and safety, with a broader meaning of the medicines which are placed on the market. But let's go to the next one and let's enter into other things. So what are the objectives of the regulation that we have? Well, the first is safeguarding public and animal health, and also to ensure the protection of the environment, but we have much more. So we have to tackle antimicrobial resistance, is a big part. We need to increase availability for the very many reasons I explained, foster innovation, enhance the internal market, and to reduce the administrative burden. So moving to the next slide, I will start with antimicrobial resistance. We need to be, and we are, world's leader, and we need a forward-looking regulation. As you may understand, it took us so many years to reach here. You saw in the first slide that we spent more than 4 years discussing how the regulation has to be looking like. That when we put in place a new legislation, we have to be thinking in the future, because it will take many, many years until we have new regulation in place. We have groundbreaking policy measures to ensure prudent and responsible use of antimicrobials. It is a major tool to achieve the objectives of the Farm to Fork strategy, where we pretend to cut by half the overall Union sales of antimicrobials for farm animals and in aquaculture by 2030. And I want to highlight that for the first time, the Union has measures in place for animals and products of animal origin imported into the Union, where we have some restrictions in relation to the use of antimicrobials. From time to time in the Commission, we also give money to help the member states to implement the legislation. And in this respect, we are providing financial support for them to collect data on the sales and use of antimicrobials, which is a new requirement in the regulation and very important in order to take in the future more targeted measures. But we do consider that education is fundamental. And in this respect, we have allocated a budget of a bit less of 3 million euros to train farmers and veterinarians in relation to antimicrobial resistance, but also the new legislation. And I'm pleased to inform you that this training will be starting at the end of this year or at the beginning of next year, and it will take place in all the member states. So going to the next slide, and conscious of the time, here you have some few examples of some of the challenges which are today achievements on the screen, and I'm not going to enter into all the details. We have some which are very closely related to the fight against antimicrobial resistance. And I want to say that the VMP regulation cannot be seen in isolation. We do have at the union level other policies which in a way are closely interrelated, like the animal health law, the new legislation on medicated feed, but also the member states, they have national action plans. So there is a lot. And you have seen on the screen many of the new measures. One of the most controversial and important is the list of antimicrobials, which are now reserved for exclusive use in humans. So these antimicrobials cannot be used in any case in animals, and this is a major step forward, but also in relation to imports of animals and produce of animal origin from third countries where they cannot use growth promoters, and they also need to apply the list of reserved antimicrobials for human use. In the next slide, you have more examples of the measures which are already in place. Many of them, in my view, are a major achievement. We have the Union product database in the center. This is between the main challenges and achievements, and everyone who has been working and investing on that, they are conscious of how much work, effort it was until it was born. And I really surrounded by the main colleagues here in the European Medicines Agency, but there are much more things for all. If we can go to the next one. Here, don't worry, I'm not going to enter into the details. This is for those of you who want to understand which are the pieces of legislation which are already published. You have two highlighted in red, which came as a surprise, but you have the full picture. And in the next slide, you can see what are we doing now in the Commission. So in blue, you can see that we are working in parallel in 9 legal acts. We have identified those of them for which we already got the scientific advice by the agency. Those legal acts for which the Commission has already sent mandates to the European Medicines Agency. And in the right, you have the last legal acts for which the Commission does not have any deadline for adoption, and we will work on them at a later stage. To take the opportunity to thank and congratulate the agency, because all the mandates that we sent to the agency, we always got on time a scientific advice, which has been used at the basis for all these legal acts, but also to all the experts who have contributed to the production of these mandates. If we can go to the next slide, and I'm about to finalize. The implementation challenge continue. To have all the necessary scientific advices available, the legal acts publishes, the many different databases operative in place well on time. I say here that it was a challenge for all, but I think it was close to be a miracle, and the amount of work was huge. We have 16 legal acts already published. We are working in parallel in 9, and we are focusing on the implementation of the rules to finalize all the legal acts that we need to have the full legal framework and to give interpretation of the different provisions. because of course we can read the text, but the interpretations are more than different at the end of the day. In the next slide, here you have the relevant website where you can follow progress, but also the link to the website where you can provide your feedback. It's open to all citizens. This is not just only for the stakeholders. And then I will go to the last slide. I hope that my presentation, I didn't take a lot of time. And all that we have achieved is thanks to the efforts of contributions of the agency, the national competent authorities, all the stakeholders, citizens, experts, scientists, the Council and the Parliament. And from the Commission side, we are grateful to all of you. So with this, Mr. Chair, I'm over, and I hope that I didn't take a lot of the time. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Eva. And you did take a bit more time than we allowed you, but I think it was an excellent overview of what the Awareness Day is about. Why are we doing these things and what are we doing? So a lot of the themes that you've been addressing will come back during the coming days. So I couldn't have wished for a better introduction to the Vet Awareness Day. Thank you very much. Before I give the floor to myself for the next presentation, let me say a few things. This morning's session will end with a questions and answers session. And so if you have questions for Eva or for any of the other speakers, please put them in the chat, and we will then try to collate them and guide the discussion at the end of the day. Also, I would like to make you aware that all the presentations will be made available on the website. I think it's important, so you don't need to take pictures or notes extensively. They will be published on the website after the meeting. And so discussion after my presentation and Martin's presentation, and I look forward to that. So once again, Eva, thanks a lot for that excellent introduction. I will start with the next presentation. But before I do, for those of you that don't know me, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Ivo Klaassen. I'm the head of the Veterinary Medicines Division here at the agency since 2018. I joined the agency after having worked in the veterinary sector for about 20 years, and before that in the human sector, particularly on vaccines and infectious diseases. And during that period, I was a member of the Committee for Veterinary Medicinal Products here at the agency, which was then still located in London. And over the past 5 years, one of the main things I've been working on, and you will hear that possibly more often, is the implementation or preparing for the implementation of the Veterinary Medicinal Products Regulation, which we refer to as the new veterinary regulation, but which is now no longer the new veterinary regulation, it's just the veterinary regulation. With that, I would like to give you in my presentation an introduction on the agency first, for those of you that are not aware of this. And this is what the intention of this day is. We would like to inform not our usual stakeholders who know exactly what we are doing and who we are, but we're trying to liaise with a new type of public, and we consider, in fact, all European citizens as our stakeholders, but particularly we're looking for more interaction with academia and other types of organizations. And I think this introduction is therefore well placed to get an understanding of what is the European Medicines Agency, what are we doing, how do we fit in the European regulatory network. So our mission is very much about protecting human and animal health. European Medicines Agency is there to facilitate the development and access to medicines, both for human and veterinary, to evaluate together with the member states the applications for marketing authorizations, but also to monitor the safety of medicines across their life cycle. We would also like to provide reliable information on human and veterinary medicines to patients and healthcare professionals. So why do I stress reliable information here? There's a lot of information out there. You can go to Dr. Google, find all sorts of information on human and veterinary medicines. However, if you go to the website of the European Medicines Agency or to any of the websites of national competent authorities in Europe, and for example, the FDA website, the chances are that you will find more reliable information with accurate information on it. And so comparing the information there with the information that's published on the website really pays off. Can I have the next slide, please? So who do we work for in the European Union? As you are aware, we got 27 member states. This is a bit of a weird, in the background, you see a bit of a weird map of Europe because there's some countries are being left out because they're not member states of the European Union. So we've deleted the British island almost completely, except for a part of Ireland that does not belong to the UK, and also Norway, has been cut off, and Scandinavia has a totally different coastline in this way. But these are the 27 member states. 27 member states worldwide, approximately 21% of global sales of medicines. And we have to do business in 24 official languages. And why is it mentioned here? All the information about medicines, be it human or veterinary medicines, has to be published in these 24 official languages. We'll go to the next slide. We've been established in 1995. Eva already mentioned it. The agency itself has about 800 staff members, but we do work with about 4,000 scientific experts from across Europe. A lot of them belong to the national competent authorities in the member states, of which we have many. And of course, these 4,000 experts are not all there to support us in the authorization of veterinary medicinal products. I would say a few hundred of these scientific experts are really active in the veterinary area. The agency works with 7 scientific committees, of which the CVMP, the Committee for Veterinary Medicinal Products, is the most relevant for this meeting. But there's also a human committee. There's a committee for orphan medicines, for pediatrics, for advanced therapies, for herbals, and the PRAC is the committee dealing with safety issues. So it's the pharmacovigilance committee. The agency is governed by one management board, which has all the 27 member states represented, 4 civil societies, amongst which also Federation of Veterinarians in Europe as the important one for the veterinary medicinal products, 2 European Commission representatives, and 2 representatives from the European Parliament. Can I have the next slide, please? So human and veterinary medicines. What we're talking about here is human and veterinary medicines that have been authorized through a centrally authorization procedure. We got about 1,300 medicines recommended for authorization for use in humans, and 260 medicines recommended for authorization in animals. And these are, under the old directives, all innovative products, new methodologies of production, cancer drugs. So it's basically where innovation has played an important part in bringing them to the market, where it is mandatory that these products are being assessed through the centrally authorized system. And what the centrally authorized system is, I'll explain in the next slide. How are medicines approved? There's 2 distinct roles. One is the centralized procedure via EMA, which involves all the member states. It's through the committees, and the authorization itself, we give an opinion, and the authorization itself is by the Commission. Commission has a role to play there, and Commission then liaises again with the member states. So it's a sort of 2-tier approach where the scientific opinion is being weighed again and then agreed upon in the standing committee, either for veterinary medicinal products or for human medicinal products. And then we have the national procedures, and connected to the national procedures, we have mutual recognition procedures in the member states. And that's the majority of medicines that you will see on the market are authorized through that procedure. Largely generics, but also, for example, auto vaccines on the veterinary side are being authorized through national procedures. To coordinate mutual recognition procedure, there's the coordination group, the CMDV on the veterinary side, CMDH on the human side, that meets every month and discusses their mutual recognition, which then can lead to the authorization of products on the market in different member states, but it's different from the centrally authorized procedure. A central authorization provides a marketing authorization holder with access for their product in all individual member states in the union, all in one go. It's a one-stop shopping for a very broad authorization. If we can have the next slide, please. You will hear this probably a few times in the coming days, and but it is an important part of the work that we've been doing. It's the regulation. Eva has already addressed it. Regulation 2019/6 on veterinary medicinal products. It replaced an old directive with the overall aim to achieve a better regulation in the EU. Should provide for a modern, innovative, and fit-for-purpose legal framework. It gives incentives to stimulate innovation. It gives incentives to increase the availability of veterinary medicines, and it strengthens the EU action to fight antimicrobial resistance. It's all been mentioned by Eva in her presentation already. It's in application since about a year and a half, and we would like to look also in, has it really delivered? We'll do that in the coming years. If we can go to the next slide, please. What does it actually mean, better regulation in veterinary medicines? Looking at these four main blocks and looking at better availability of veterinary medicines, what are we actually doing? So the legal framework stimulates innovation, and innovation is needed because we need new medicines to also deal with new demands in the market, but also, for example, to look at alternatives to the use of antimicrobials. If we reduce the use of antimicrobials and it takes away therapeutic options, what are we going to use to fill in that area? So innovation and antimicrobial dealing with antimicrobial resistance are in that way connected. There's an increased flexibility of the prescription cascade. It's easier to import medicines from other EU member states, so prescriptions are valid throughout the European Union. And also it provides a regulatory framework for online sales through certified online pharmacies for non-prescription medicines. So all of this together should provide easier access to more treatment options, or at least increase availability of treatment options in markets where previously maybe that was more difficult. You can get the next slide, please. Accessible information on veterinary medicines available in the EU. Already mentioned, the Union Product Database provides information on all veterinary medicines authorized in any EU member states. And just to give you a figure, that's about 43,000 different products that are in the EU member states. So it's the centrally authorized products and it's the nationally authorized products and those products that are being authorized through the MRP DCP procedure. 43,000 products. It's a staggering amount, and you can imagine that maintaining that database and ensuring that the quality in that database is sufficient for the database to operate is quite a challenge. And we're still working on that. The UPD is there. Quality is one of the topics. But also, we're working on how can you access information in that database? How can we provide more functionality to, for example, veterinarians in looking for certain indications, what type of medicines are matching there? So these are the issues that we would like to resolve in the coming years. And that information includes, but it's not limited to, the name of the active substance, the summary of product characteristics, which contains that indication. So it's probably a basis for a system which would allow you to look into that. European public assessment reports, so that you can see what has actually been assessed on individual medicines. And the dates of placing on the market in a member state and the information on availability of each veterinary medicinal product. It does not contain information on shortages because that's not within the legal framework for veterinary medicinal products, whereas it is on the human side. All this should result in easier access to information about treatment options. And its availability, basically, that I think is something that we commonly would like to promote, providing access to medicines, veterinary medicines, when they are needed in the field. Then on the reduction of the risk of antimicrobial resistance in the next slide. And there's quite a lot in the regulation, so this is just a condensed summary. We've worked on a scientific advice to the Commission for certain antimicrobials to be restricted to human use, and it's been translated into a delegated act in order to reserve these antimicrobials for when they are needed really in the field of human medicines. We've put restrictions in use on antimicrobials that can be used under the cascade. The preventive use, so prophylactic use of antimicrobials is prohibited, and metaphylaxis is only allowed under specific conditions. And maybe not new in a strict sense, but the collection of sales data, which was on a voluntary basis, has now become mandatory under the new regulation. But on top of that, the regulation asks us to collect the data at member state level on the use of antimicrobials in food producing animals at farm level, but gradually going to a system where we will collect the use data for all veterinary use. So as you know, as of today, developing a system that in 2030 will give us a lot of insight on the use of antimicrobials in domestic animals, horses, and all farmed livestock. And collecting the use data is one thing. Connecting the use data to antimicrobial resistance itself, I think, is another important thing. So getting a better understanding of how all these, let's say, different compartments link together, as was explained in the slide that Eva had shown us. At the same time, there's a driver to reduce the use of veterinary antimicrobials, and we encourage and monitor prudent use of antimicrobials. So all this is either direct or indirect effects of the new regulation. If I can move to the next slide, which is about encouraging pharmacovigilance reporting. There's been a huge revision of the pharmacovigilance system in and by itself. We're working on the implementation of that, which should lead to improved pharmacovigilance reporting and evaluation system. But also, because we would like to be very transparent, public access to safety profile of each product, including incidents of suspected adverse events reported each year, broken down by products, animal species, and type of suspected events, is going to be published on our website. And that includes reactions in animals, humans, lack of efficacy, and environmental issues. Because when we look at pharmacovigilance for veterinary medicinal products, we're not only interested in the risks for the animal per se, it's the risks for the environment and the risks for the users, and also potential risk for the consumer of animal produce. Possibility to impose specific requirements for veterinarians in relation to reporting suspected adverse events. And the agency may and will organize meetings for a group of veterinary healthcare professionals in case of specific need for collecting, collating, or analyzing specific pharmacovigilance data. And all this should lead to improved information on safety profile of specific products and a chance to get involved, but also in being transparent about pharmacovigilance issues that may arise. If I can go to the next slide, please. A bit of this has already been addressed. It's how we work in the network with the European Commission on the left side, European Medicines Agency between the European Commission and the member state, whereas there's also a direct relationship between the member states and the European Commission, specifically on co-decision on regulation. Already mentioned by Eva, the Commission provides mandates to the European Medicines Agency to work on certain scientific advices, but we rely heavily on the input of the member states in providing the experts that work with our team on these advices, which then subsequently will be translated into legislation. If we can go to the next slide, please. On digitalization and transparency, I've mentioned it a few times. In the new regulation, there is specifically mentioned that we should establish this union product database to provide access to product data, but also on the pharmacovigilance side. So what we've been building over the past years is indeed that union product database that stores and makes available information on all the authorized veterinary medicinal products. The union pharmacovigilance database that stores and makes available information on the suspected adverse events for all veterinary medicinal products in the union, so centrally authorized products as well as nationally authorized products. The union database on manufacturing and wholesale distribution, and also the collection of data on sales and use of antimicrobials in animals to store and again make available information on the sales and use of antimicrobials. And the agency publishes these data, but they also will be made available through the public portal. If I can go to the next slide, please. And this is my last slide. This is the slide which I think does two things. It sets the scene for the Veterinary Awareness Day. It describes a bit of where are the opportunities for the veterinary network, both regulators, marketing authorization holders, and veterinarians, and all those people involved. The action potential for Europe. We must increase awareness of social and economic relevance of the work in veterinary medicines, because most of what we do, and we hope to demonstrate that in the coming 2 days, impacts people, all the citizens in the union. And bulletized here, healthy livestock for food production industry. The safety of food derived from animals through the evaluation of MRLs and setting of withdrawal periods for veterinary medicines to be used in food producing animals. To foster the prudent use of antibiotics in animals. Safeguarding antibiotics so that they continue to work for humans. Healthy pet animals who have a positive impact on human health. We will discuss that under one of the sessions on societal impact of animals. Protecting the environment from harmful substances in veterinary medicines, and not only veterinary medicines, also human medicines, but certainly it's something that we need to address. And sometimes, and we will see that also in some of the presentations later, that may be an indirect and unexpected impact on human health. Animal welfare through 3R policies and veterinary medicines, but also again here we'll see a presentation later in one of the sessions on how improvements in animal welfare can help in reducing the use or the need for antimicrobials in livestock practice. So this is all interconnected. And I think what we would like to do in the program the coming days is to show how we work in this area, how all this is interconnected, and how we try to make these connections and ensure that whatever we do does have an impact that is not only looking at the availability of veterinary medicinal products, but goes way beyond that. And with that, I would like to close my part and happy to take questions later on. And now I have to introduce the next speaker. And the next speaker of today is Martin, and I'm looking for his. Martin, who are you, by the way? You know, Martin's the head of international affairs here at the agency, and he's had a long career at the agency and also outside the agency. And Martin, I think the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ivo.
For this.
God, who am I? That's a question I asked myself many times. Okay, so good morning. My name is Martin Harvey, Head of International Affairs. I was struck by Ava's presentation of this long squiggly line of the creation of the European Medicines Agency. Remembering that the very first piece of legislation in Europe was 26th of January 1965, and the inauguration of the European Medicines Agency was the 26th of January 1995, exactly 30 years from the first European legislation on pharmaceuticals to the inauguration of the agency. I remember that day because actually I was present at the agency on 26th of January 1995, and I joined the agency in 95. So I've had quite a few different roles at the agency. Eva gave you an overview of the European Union and the Commission, Parliament, Council. Ivo has just talked us through the new, the regulation formerly known as the new VMP. I want to take us a little bit outside of the European Union and just try and contextualize what we are doing and place us into a global environment, if I possibly could do. I'm trying to take control of the slides, but I can't, Sylvia. So I'm going to have to do the next slide, please. I was trying to avoid having to do that. So why? It isn't just the European Union that's impacted by by animal health and veterinary medicines. Eva and Ivo have just, that's quite interesting partnership, Eva and Ivo. They've just given an overview, but I wanted just to take us a little bit more detail. So why do we engage? So engagement and cooperation is very much part of what we do here at the European Medicines Agency. It's what we do on a daily basis. About some of the reasons why. Some of you may be asking, why does the European Medicines Agency get involved with international? Well, here are a couple of bullets. There is never, ever enough resource of any regulator. And I defy any regulator anywhere in the world to say they have enough resource to do their work. Because no one single agency, no matter what their size and resource level, can do it all by themselves. And so it's about avoiding the duplication of work and releasing the resources to do the added value that you can do within your own jurisdiction. The sorts of things that we've been talking about today and tomorrow, we need to ensure alignment across regulators worldwide, and to make sure some of that alignment also goes into the space of the pharmaceutical industry. And so a lot of the work we do together, and we'll come on to that in a moment, is about creating this alignment. Access. Ivo has just been talking about access, and one of the big pillars of the new veterinary medicines regulation is one of the objectives to speed up access. And so a lot of the discussions is to how can we speed up and promote the joint development of new medicines. And clearly, we are in the fortunate position in the European Union to have a certain level of resource and competence. And what we're trying to do through our engagement and collaboration is to support other regulators who may not have that level of resource, or in some cases, some of the specific competencies that we're fortunate to have in the range of expertise that Ivo just mentioned in his first slide. And just to say that a couple of years ago, we did a quick wet finger in the air review of the committee's agendas. Something like 80% of all the products going through the committees, so CVMP, CHMP, have some form of international touch point. So that is an extremely high level of engagement, and what we're striving to do is have this alignment that is good for us as regulators, is good for the pharmaceutical industry, is good for animal owners, and is good for veterinary medicines in general, that we are actually investing and really promoting this sort of engagement. Just to give you an idea, we had just under 2,000 interactions with international regulators in 2022. The majority of those were with the US FDA. And interestingly, today, 12th of September, is the 20th anniversary of the signature of the very first confidentiality arrangement signed by DG Santé, the European Medicines Agency, and the US FDA. So we are marking today 20 years of that collaboration. Next slide, Sylvia. I wanted to bring us, having sort of taken us outside of the global environment, I just wanted just to establish some of the where this comes from. We have within the European Medicines Network, and the network is Eva just described earlier on, European Commission, the European Medicines Agency, and of course, the national regulatory authorities. So this medicines regulatory network, we have a strategy to 2025. There are 6 key priority areas, and they very much align the pharmaceutical strategy for Europe that was established by the European Commission. I apologize for the rather random bolding here, but I just wanted to show that what we are doing, both in the regulation and internationally, is very, very much aligned to the priorities of the medicines network strategy. We've talked about availability and access. We've talked about the small limited markets and the importance of the UPD that Eva has just been talking about, the data analytics. We recognize the historic low resource invested in this, and Eva has just been talking about some of the work that we're doing to catch up and to invest in that area. Antimicrobial resistance, we have a whole session about that later on, but it is absolutely front and center of the medicines network priorities, and very much so for us here. We talked about some of the supply chain challenges, and it's quite interesting that we are doing quite a lot of work in the area of GMP and GDP for veterinary medicines. The one thing I haven't included here, the network I just wanted to touch on, is the European Union is very much political at the moment, is looking towards the eastern part of the non-EU Europe. And so we do have a program in place funded by the European Commission, which goes by the additional acronym. No one has enough acronyms in their life. So I'm going to throw another one at you. IPA is the Instrument for Pre-Accession Assistance. So Instrument for Pre-Accession Assistance, IPA. And we will next year launch the third cycle of our IPA support to the candidate countries and potential candidates. I think that's the official terminology. And we will be very much including in this third cycle from 2024 to 2026. We will be very much focusing, including veterinary medicines as part of the IPA program to support and work with regulators from candidate country as they sort of work towards aligning with the EU legislation. Next slide. So how do we do all this international collaboration? This is not comprehensive, and I do not pretend to be an expert in veterinary, in the veterinary area, but broadly, it's in two main buckets. One is the bilateral engagements. So I mentioned earlier that we have we're marking 20 years of collaboration with the US FDA, but it's not just with the US FDA. We have bilateral engagements signed with a number of countries, country regulators. They are all co-signed by DG Santé and EMA with the regulators in the other country. Not all of them cover veterinary medicines in brackets yet. Sometime we're working on them separately, but the ones that cover veterinary medicines as well are Brazil, Canada, New Zealand, Switzerland, the US, and the EDQM, so the European Department for Quality of Medicines, part of the Council of Europe, not the European Union. So those are the broad confidentiality arrangements which allow us to engage and share commercial confidential information with those other regulators. To support these relations, we have international liaison officers. So as part of this team here at the EMA, we have staff seconded from both the US and the Japanese regulators are part of the staff here at the agency. And similarly, one of my team is seconded to the US FDA and is located in Washington, DC. So this ensures we have this really very fluid and very immediate exchange of information between the regulators. Confidentiality arrangements we just mentioned. We also have mutual recognition agreements. Now, this is not specifically EMA responsibility. These are signed by the European Commission under mandate from Council. But the mutual recognition agreements allow us to work together on exchange of GMP inspections, and we're very happy that this year that the US-EU MRA was extended to include veterinary medicines. We talked about innovation a little earlier on, and pharmacovigilance as well. I want to mention the veterinary medicines clusters. Now, these clusters are small focus groups. And each cluster, we have 31 in total, by the way, not all of them veterinary medicines. There are 3 specific ones dealing with veterinary medicines, and they all include both the US FDA and the EMA. And then they will also include other partners. But we have 3 at the moment, one dealing with veterinary medicines, which allow us to have these very detailed interactions and discussions with the US FDA on veterinary medicines that we have currently under review. We have one on pharmacovigilance, veterinary pharmacovigilance, and one on veterinary novel therapies. So these are really powerful platforms that allow us to have these discussions. We do discuss individual products with our counterparts in regulators with whom we have these confidentiality arrangements. Going to move to, so that's the bilateral relations we have. Oh, no, Sylvia, I know I've spoken a bit too much, but I haven't quite left that slide yet. Because the most interesting part of the slide is on the right-hand side. It's about the multilateral, because actually that's the really exciting bit. I'm always in awe. Every time I hear anything from the veterinary division colleagues, I'm always in awe how this group can actually engage so wide and so far with, and it's really quite extraordinary the amount of engagement they have. I'm not going to go into details with all of these, but you can see from here the range of multilateral forums with which the EMA colleagues, including the member representatives from the national agencies and CVMP, will engage across various areas. And we'll mention there the Codex Alimentarius, incredibly important for food standards and MRLs. We have the FAO, European Commission for Control of Foot and Mouth Disease, and the FAO Standing Committee on the pre-qualification of vaccines against fast diseases. So, and there's quite a lot of work going on there. At the bottom, there's a scientific opinions for international organizations for animal health. Now, this is a piece of the veterinary regulation that we have not yet used. And it's taken as an analogy to the Article 58 on the human medicine side. And it allows the agency to give an opinion on the use of veterinary medicines for use outside of the European Union in conjunction with international organization. And so it's not something we've yet used, but it's something that we will be working on and to see how we can fit that into the armamentarium. But again, it's about how do we then leverage and engage with international partners. Sylvia, we can then go to the next slide. I spoke about reliance earlier on. I just want to emphasize that the CVMP opinion isn't the end of the journey. You come to the industry, comes to us, deposits their opinion, CVMP gives its application, the CVMP assesses, gives the opinion, and the European Commission then grants the marketing authorization. But that is not the end of it. So a couple of things here we just want to highlight is the assessment from the CVMP can be used by industry to leverage the scientific assessments for marketing authorizations in other parts of the world. Industry is absolutely entitled to share the assessment reports and the inspection reports with other regulators. You have responsibility for redaction and the personal data control, the personal information control, and those sorts of responsibilities. But you are perfectly at liberty to share the assessment reports, and we are very happy for industry to do that. It's about promoting the European voice globally as well. In addition to the scientific assessment, we also see a really good use of something called the certificates of medicinal products. This is initially a WHO scheme, but it also includes veterinary medicines. And we can see that about 19, well, it's not about, it's exactly 99 countries have been, pharmaceutical industry has used these certificates to promote or secure authorization of their products in 99 countries between 2018 and 2023. So, which is, and I tried to do a heat map to show where, but I didn't have enough data. But I just wanted to say that having did a quick count, something like 24 countries in Africa, a similar number in Latin America, many countries in Eastern Europe, and across Asia and the rest of the world. So it's a very, very wide geographical footprint that where industry is using the CPP and the scientific assessment to leverage the CVMP to achieve marketing authorization elsewhere in the world. I think that's really, really key to promoting the value of the CVMP assessment. I've laboured the point about reliance. I will just mention it there again, but next slide, Sylvia. So Ava, in her presentation, had a cute puppy and a cute kitten. Who doesn't like a cute kitten or cute puppy? So I think it's the biggest meme on Instagram. But I'm going to take you to a different part of the world. For those of you who have kids and have watched the cartoons, Disney, you'll notice the vulture is always the evil character. Well, I was struck by an article in The Economist 2 weeks ago. And some of you will probably either seen that or even seen some of the older scientific reviews. But I thought the wonderful title, "The Demise of the Indian Vulture Kills Thousands of People." And without sort of going too much into this, I just thought it was an interesting story. It's about the impact of generic diclofenac use in cattle and the impact it has on the use of veterinary medicines, on animal health, and ultimately on human health. What I was struck, and again, it comes back into academia. Eva spoke about academia, and struck by there's a paper published in January earlier this year by some academics from Chicago and Warwick universities and various other institutions. And they said, on average, all-cause human death rates increased by 4% in vulture-suitable districts after the birds nearly went extinct. So if you want to draw a straight line between the importance of veterinary medicines and human health, this is a really good example. And this is important in terms of the international bit, because it involved academics and regulators from Europe, India, and Africa looking at, once we had identified the issue, because it goes back to 2014 with the original CVMP opinion and report on this, regulators across the globe began addressing the issues about control and use of diclofenac, and we are seeing an improvement on the Indian vulture population that some academics had identified was almost approaching species extinction, species collapse. So again, this is really important a piece of work that regulators and academics and industry have engaged together to touch on one of the things that Ava raised about animal welfare. And I think I do recommend you go back and pick up the article, because there are some really interesting bits of information in there. My last slide then, Sylvia. Health in the EU strongly linked with health outside the EU. It's a really clear message. Our way of working here at the MA is incredibly important. I'm extremely proud to be able to be that sort of the international face of what's the work of the CVMP, the CHMP, and the colleagues here at the agency, what we do. I know it is highly appreciated. And I just wanted us to really make sure that we all leave this discussion today, that what we do here at the agency, the engagement, the cooperation, is part of our DNA. We have the 27 member states, we have Iceland, Norway, and Liechtenstein. So the reliance and the cooperation is part of what we do anyway within the European Union. And our international engagement takes that outside and promotes our work outside on the international scene. And with that, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Martin, for the messages in your presentation. And I think this concludes the morning session when it comes to the presentations. I hope it has given you a bit of an overview of what we're doing, why we're doing this, why it is important, the role of the agency in that, and also how we work in a more global context and why that is relevant. So thank you for all the speakers on giving that. Which means that we move on to the questions and answers. And I'm trying to let me open a document which would contain that. Of course, there was an opportunity, as I said, to provide questions in the chat. But if there's any questions here from the audience in the room, we'd also be happy to take them. So looking around. Kyle, I was expecting something from you.
Excellent. Hello, my name is Carl de Machis-Servaas. I have a question for Martin, please. So great examples of all the cooperation and with international agencies and groups. What else is in the planning? If you had the possibility of looking forward, what other kind of scenarios or groups or forms of cooperation could you imagine that with other veterinary or comparable agencies to EMA? Thank you.
Gosh. Where do we go? Okay, let's start with the, I know I think training is a really important part of what we're doing. So I know there are discussions within VICH and the outreach group in terms of training. The World Organization for Animal Health, they're also focusing on training. I think that is where we really need to be focusing the efforts on training and aligning the understanding and expertise in assessment. I think that's probably something where we probably need to focus on. I know there are lots of excitement and interest around the African Medicines Agency, and I suspect that's where you were gently going with your question. Yes, the African Medicines Agency is purely focused on medicines for human use. Purely focused on medicines for human use. There was discussion at one point on whether it should be expanded to include veterinary medicines, but the level of the African Union, my understanding is that was not included. That being said, the expertise and experience that the regulators across the 55 countries of Africa will gain through their alignment and convergence on the evaluation of human medicines will have potentially a knock-on effect to their capacity and understanding of the assessments they're needed for veterinary medicines. So it's not entirely, unconscionable that it could have a knock-on effect that way. Carol's given me a thumbs up, so I think I may have touched on what he actually was going for in his question.
Well, no, Carl, thank you for asking this question, because you ask us what other forms of collaboration can we imagine. I can imagine quite a lot, actually, and maybe some of these things should really happen. So you mentioned the African Medicines Agency. I think there's a real need in other regions for being trained as regulator and for using that to leverage access to the markets of good quality medicines. I think that's what we all want. Medicines that are safe. So the disease, the foot and mouth disease, and other fast program pre-qualification is one of those tools. We will work with regulators there. I'm on the steering committee of that team. There's a few other initiatives that I would like to mention here that could help, or that I can imagine. One is on the human side, there's ICMRA, which is the International Coalition of Medicines Regulatory Authorities, but it's human largely. There's no, and they also have strategies on how do we control AMR, etc. That can only be done in a One Health approach. You have to look at both the veterinary and the human part of it. But there's no global platform of let's say veterinary regulators. Initiatives have been there. We've got the VICH, but that includes marketing authorization holders. So I could totally imagine that if we could establish such a global platform for veterinary medicines regulators, that could be a vehicle for A, collaboration, B, training, because it would be open to not the usual suspects, which is FDA, Health Canada, EMA, and the Japanese authorities, but also others. I know that GulfMed, Global Alliance for Veterinary Medicines, is very much interested in providing training to regulators, and also Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and recently met with them in a meeting in Canada, and they would really be interested if we from the agency or involving other European regulators could indeed support that training in other areas. Certainly something that I would like to look into. When I talk about the usual suspects, the agency works with Health Canada, FDA, and the VRC, but there's, I mean, the global context should be much wider than that. So there's ample opportunities for expanding that, provided that we have the resource to do that and that we can really bring it to levels of harmonization that will benefit both regulators as well as the users of veterinary medicinal products, and of course, by definition, also the marketing authorization holders. But that's still a long way. But I think we should start that collaboration now. And if I can just imagine, that would be the ideal world. Is that an answer to your question, Carol?
It's always, as you touched on the point, it's resource and it's the level of harmonization and convergence. And maybe we ought to be thinking that it's not just harmonization is the highest level of working together. Perhaps we ought to be thinking about convergence as a preliminary step before we go to complete harmonization. So there are many different opportunities out there. It's a slow pace, but we're seeing there are good steps towards doing this. So watch the space.
Okay, a few questions. Sorry, Ivo, you go first, and then.
Thank you very much, Ivo Roesink, the other Ivo in the room. Thanks for your nice presentation and overview of the context in which this work is being performed. I was just wondering, are you impacted or influenced by the new European food law, which not necessarily focuses on these kind of products, but more on plant protection products and things like that, but have a certain overlap, perhaps?
I think this is a question for the Commission as well, because the Commission is responsible, as you've heard, for making sure that regulation matches. So, Eva, I'm not sure you heard the question from Ivo, but it's about.
I was reading.
No, you were distracted. So, Ivo, please, can you ask again?
I was wondering if the new European food law comes into view when you talk about veterinary medicines as well, and are you impacted by that?
Well, many thanks for your question. In theory, and I hope that in practice, all our policies have to be consistent, and everyone is intervening in the Commission between the different services. On issues related to food safety, we are all consulted and we complement each other. We have to be consistent and coherent. So in that respect, the answer is yes to everything. We need to complement each other, and in theory, our legislations, our different pieces of legislation are complementary. When I was referring, for example, to some achievements in the antimicrobial resistance area, there are many, many others pieces of legislation which are dealing with these aspects, but also in terms of food safety. Not sure if I have responded to your question the way you wanted.
Yes, thank you very much. I was just wondering if the request of making information publicly available also is transferred to the other fields of other molecules.
Well, transparency, it's always there, but sometimes there is some confidential information that cannot be made publicly available. So I think that at the European Union level, not only in the area of veterinary medicinal products, we are quite transparent and there is a lot of information available, but everything has some limit. We have also some information that has to be and must be protected. But I could say we are very transparent, in particular compared to others.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Luca, please.
Luca Guardabassi, University of Copenhagen. It has been mentioned during the presentations that the companion animal population is growing, and also our relationship with companion animals is getting closer and closer. And they have obviously an important role in our happiness and welfare as well. So also because of this close environment we share with companion animals, as a microbiologist, I know very well that we share also the microbiota with these animals, and often, fortunately, in rare cases, they get infected with some of these multi-drug resistant bacteria that cause human hospital infections. So the question or the point I want to make here is that in some cases, some of the antimicrobials that are listed in the new list of antimicrobials for animal use only would be essential to save the lives of these animals. And in my opinion, it would have been better. Of course, companion animals are included in this list, so they cannot be used any longer since February 2023. In my opinion, it would have been better, sorry, if for companion animals, specific conditions were listed to make the use of at least some of these drugs possible. So I don't know who I should ask this question, but you probably all have a companion animal at home, and I would like to know how you would react if you take your dog or cat to the veterinarian and you are told that it will be euthanized because no drugs can be used for curing the infection. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Luca, for asking this question. I think it's a question for the Commission in the end.
Well, Luca, many thanks for your question. You know, during my presentation, I talk about the co-legislators and the empowerments that we do have. And we have to stick to what we have in the regulation. So in the regulation, we have an empowerment to list, to produce a list of antimicrobials, which are exclusively related for the use in human health. But before that, there is a lot of work behind, because the starting point was to develop the criteria to be used in order to list those antimicrobials. And within those criteria, we did also have animal health. So we have human health, animal health, and also the transfer of antimicrobial resistance, to say it in very simple words for everyone to understand. And it was based, again, on a scientific advice, and the list was drafted on that basis. So I can understand that you have rather prefer that there was a derogation for companion animals or endangered species. But this wasn't the case. This is not the mandate of the co-legislator, and taking into account the best available science, the criteria, we have antimicrobials which are banned for any use in animals, no matter if they are companion, if they are food producing animals. Because the ultimate goal is to preserve human health, but animal health was taken into account as one of the main factors. And during my presentation, I said that it was one of the most controversial legal acts that we have produced in all the steps, the criteria which were developed, and we had any kind of criticism, because using animal health as a criteria was also very much criticized by many as well. But we think that the list that we have today is a list built on a scientific basis. All the substances which are included in the list are identical to the substances which were recommended by the scientific advice, and this can be revised over the time. So if there is some new science available, the Commission, together with the agency, because we will be asking them to give us a new scientific advice. If we do find that there is a substance that for whatever reason, it is essential to preserve animal health broadly, then we are always ready to revise it. And it will be revised in the right context. We need also the support from the member states. So this is a long procedure, but again, this is all based on science, and animal health was very well taken into consideration. I hope that my reply addressed your question. Thank you.
I think maybe just because the way I understand your question is that by not being able to treat these companion animals when they have a multi-resistant bacteria, it does create a risk for the human population as well. Those that are close to the companion animals. Is that the correct interpretation?
No, it was more on the animal health side that in these situations, the veterinarian would recommend euthanasia of the dog or the cat. And you have answered. I got the political answer, which I appreciate. But on the personal level, we should all be able to answer this question: if our pet is going to be euthanized because of a lack of access to a drug, are we going to be happy? And what are the consequences on the mental status of the pet owner, which can be an elderly person or stuff like that?
Well, thank you. So thank you for that clarification. It's more an ethical issue. I've got questions online, which I would like to take. And the first one is, considering the EU veterinary medicines public database, the options for search are limited. For example, it's not possible to search by marketing authorization holder. Also, it's not possible to export the search results to Excel. Are there any plans to improve the database in this direction? And even though it's a bit of a technical question, I think we can take that question. I'm looking at Jana, or I have it in front of me, but I want you to give the answer. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Ivo. Yeah, the UPD public portal indeed was launched last year. For the very first time, we have a public database available that has all the products in there. So that was the first big step and milestone there. Since then, and also going forward, we are looking to improve that public portal and its functionalities as well. So at the moment, we are working on a bit of a transformation there that will have new design. It will be more user-friendly and intuitive, hopefully, and also have a few new functionalities. So new search fields, which will include the search by marketing authorization holder, and also the availability of the actual product by country. So at the moment, you can search whether it's authorized in a particular country, but in the future, you will also be able to search to check whether it's actually available, because there's a difference there. And also, we will allow the export of the search results to a sort of Excel format, as mentioned in the question. So to a certain extent, bear with us. Keep checking that public portal. I'm sure it will really settle into becoming a very, very useful tool, both for veterinarians, but also for in general animal owners to find information on the medicines they want to use. I think, Ivo, that's it.
Okay, thank you very much. I've got another question which I will give to Martin. This is a question about how about cooperation with Asia, because I don't think we specifically mentioned that.
Gosh, we've just gone from Africa with cattle to Asia. So I suppose within VICH we have Japan, and so we have an engagement multilateral forum with Japan. We don't have a veterinary confidentiality arrangement with the Japanese agency. We currently only have with the Ministry of Health and the PMDA, which is the Human Medicines Agency. It is something that we do have on the list, but it says it'll be probably some time on. And we also have a particular engagement with Japan on the level of in the area of AMR. It's something that the Japanese government has given an equal commitment to working and very much a One Health approach as well. And they would very much like to engage further with us in the area of antimicrobial resistance, knowing that we also have a similar engagement with both Health Canada and the US FDA. So AMR side is very much part of it. We don't yet have confidentiality arrangements, and so most of our engagement with Japan is through VICH. I imagine Asia. Of course, there are many other parts of Asia, but we are not seeing the demand, and so cooperation, like dancing, requires two partners, and so we haven't yet seen that demand for cooperation with other Asian regulators as such. The only other thing just to mention is trade. So Eva, in her presentation, spoke about the trade role of the European Commission. One area where we have been engaged is to support the Commission colleagues in various trade discussions with Asian trading partners. And we've spent quite a bit of time without going into details of which particular partners they are, we spent quite a bit of time working with the regulators in the Asian countries, explaining the functioning of the European system and the CPMP, and ensuring the recognition of all medicines approved within the European Union to promote trade of European-made products with Asian trading partners. So there's quite a broad engagement, but no sort of formal confidentiality engagement. I hope that's answered the question online. Thanks.
Jordi, please.
Hiya. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jordi Torrent, Head of Department of Evaluation and Innovation. Maybe to add, Martin, and you probably are not aware of that, but with Japan, nevertheless, we have had some exchange of information on antibiotic resistance. And I remember we had, after a Codex meeting in Korea, where Eva attended some years ago, we were invited to Tokyo, a few of us together with EFSA, to give a presentation about what we are doing in the European Union on antibiotic resistance. And then we also have had some exchange of information from colleagues from Japan on the collection of data of antimicrobial. So not in a strictly formal manner, but we had some exchange of information with them, and we've been sharing our experience on collecting data on antimicrobial use for animals. Thank you.
No, thank you. Just to add that at the Commission level, and as I said, we are representing the Union in the international setting. In any new agreement or in the revised trade agreement or association agreements, we are starting to add provisions in relation to antimicrobial resistance. Then most of the existing trade agreements, they are dealing basically with animals and products of animal origin. We are adding antimicrobial resistance, but we are not including, in a way, veterinary medicinal products. However, we have a very close cooperation with very many Asian countries at the bilateral, but also at the multilateral level. So, as you know, the regulation on veterinary medicinal products is not just about veterinary medicines, but as I mentioned, we have the trade provisions in relation to imports of animals and products of animal origin and the use of antimicrobials. So all of this is taken into consideration. And in fact, we do have regular meetings with third countries also in the Asian side where we are touching upon all the very different topics. So even when not necessarily formal or in the form of confidential agreement, as mentioned with Martin, we have extensions relations with Asia on this and on very many other topics.
Okay, thank you for that. I've got one short question, which is about training. So the question is, hello, thank you for giving us insight in your work. I'm interested in the hands-on training of farmers and vets. How will the training be performed? And I think there's training that the agency is providing quite a lot. And then there's the training program that Eva mentioned. But let me first give you a bit of information about the training that the agency has been providing over the past years in preparation of the implementation of the vet regulation and continuing still. That's, I would say, very targeted training given through webinars, specifically on how to use the Union Product Database or on developments of the pharmacovigilance system and the whole multitude. So if those of you that are interested in participating in this training, because these webinars are open webinars, anyone can attend it. I can only recommend to subscribe to the newsletter where these trainings will be announced as well, and that's participation. Then there is the training program that Eva mentioned in her presentation, and my understanding is that I mean the Commission has been committing it and is not necessarily responsible for the training, but we've got in the room here Nancy from the Federation of Veterinarians in Europe, who is part of that consortium that is providing the training. So I'm not sure, Nancy, if you can say anything about it. And I do apologize for giving the floor to you just like that.
Well, thank you very much. Yes, my name is Nancy Brianna. I'm from the Federation of Veterinarians of Europe, and we're really very proud to have been awarded this tender to provide trainings. We will do that together in the consortium with the Spanish agency, the Veterinary Medicines Agency, and also INOR. So the aim is to provide trainings in all 27 EU countries. The trainings will start at the beginning of next year, and there will really be hands-on training. So we will do this together with all the actors in the different countries. The trainings are aimed both to veterinarians and to farmers. First of all, to explain to them the new regulations, all the new elements of the new veterinary medicines regulation that we now call the veterinary medicine, not anymore the new one, and also to exchange good practices between countries, between farmers, between veterinarians on how they manage to reduce antimicrobials in their farms, so that they can learn from each other. And yeah, the final aim is to further reduce the amount of antimicrobials used. So we personally think that these trainings will really be very welcomed, and we're really looking forward to starting the training schemes.
Well, thank you very much for that, Nancy. As another, it's a rather long question, but it relates to something which is actually really close to our heart. But I think the question, I don't know who asked the question, but the question describes a situation. It's about bees and medicines for bees, because they also fall under the remit of the veterinary medicinal products regulation. Question for the beekeeping sector, it's really difficult. It's a long procedure and cost, I think, to authorize medicinal products. The industries are not very interested. I think what's meant here is the bigger industry, not very interested in the investment. Beekeepers do not understand why a medicine allowed in one country is not allowed in another one. And it's a very small market. And the first resistance for active substances, thiofluvolinate and amitraz for fighting against varroa, which is a really important disease, are now documented. Moreover, it's known that there are illegal uses. Online market is in this sense a problem. So how can we improve, or how can, I guess the question is for us, how we can improve the health of bees in a degraded environment with a lot of pesticides, less food resources in abundance and diversity. And I think this is a question that tries to deal with many angles. So I would first like to ask Karel to present a bit on the perspective of the industry, because that's why you're here. And I saw Ivo Roesink also. Maybe you could give a bit of a background on environmental impact. So Ivo, you go first, and then Karel has time to think about it.
Thank you very much. I guess you saw me sitting up straight when this question popped up. The reason is I'm also a beekeeper, also involved in bee research next to my other work. And we are involved in a big project in monitoring environmental quality using honeybees as by the monitoring tools. And it's a real issue living in the bee community. So I really appreciate the question. And true, there is resistance reports coming up, but to be quite honest, Varroa treatment is a hygiene thing, and you can very well manage it by doing other things than using these drugs. The problem is that it affects the beekeeping practice, and that is sometimes troubling because you want to keep your bees as a hobby, and then it becomes more a pet, and people spend a lot of time on that, or you keep bees for honey and part of your livelihood, and then you cannot be there 24/7, 7 days a week, and then the medicine come into play because it helps you with your management, and that is a very big problem. But what we do see is that Varroa treatment is less needed, and bees are more resistant in good quality, high quality environments with enough flowers to forage on, and that's becoming a big increasing issue all over Europe. That our environment is changing so rapidly that those conditions deteriorate, and therefore, you have to change maybe your beekeeping practice. But unfortunately, there's only a limited amount of compounds available, and I'm really afraid that is not the direction you should go. But that's, of course, also a personal opinion.
Well, thank you, Ivo. Much appreciated for that answer. Karel.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can add too much to that, or if I want to add too much to that. But I mean, I think the concern is very legitimate, obviously, not just in Europe, of bee populations. And a reminder that some of these products used in crop protection are also, when we're looking at that, I know different agencies around the world are looking at that, including the European Commission. Good husbandry, very important, all the things that Ivo said. And yes, there are products available. I'm not sure if there will be more products made available, but I can only emphasize the importance of using these products according to their use conditions and their labels. And I think I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to come into that one, just to underline indeed what has been said before from our veterinarians that deal with beekeeping. We also hear a lot of concern about the number of available products. There's really very limited. And the problem also a lot of unauthorized use of products that are just available in the stores or over the internet, and that's really a problem. We know that there are some companies interested to bring new products on the market, but then it's a question: is the investment worth the profit they will get? So I think there we have to try to support getting these new products, which are really essential, like for Varroa, on the market. Thank you.
So my understanding from the responses is that it's very much about education and creating awareness amongst the beekeepers in good husbandry practices, let's put it that way. And also, I think the warning that has been given, which is also included in the question here, is how can we deal with the illegal use of products that maybe may not be in the best interest of both the bees, the beekeepers, and the environment. I think that's summarizing it. I don't see any further questions. There is one? Did I miss one question? I don't see them in the. So, Katarina, maybe you can help here.
It's a question from Amir. Amir asks, he's wondering if EMA is involved in making regulations for technologies affect animal welfare, such as 5G technology.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the last part. Did you say 5G technology? I guess the short answer to that is no. I don't know if anyone would like to add anything to that. We're not involved. I think that's what it is. But maybe Kyle, I see you
No,
asking for the
I
floor.
think the question is maybe a wider question, is the traditional role of EMA is medicines, pharmaceuticals, vaccines, et cetera, et cetera. And this question was more about kind of new technologies which don't fit into that bucket of types of products, and is whether EMA is involved or should be involved, et cetera. I think we're talking about, and we're not talking about diagnostics, but more of the digital type products.
I can try to take the question in the sense that, yes, traditionally we're looking at veterinary medicinal products and innovations that take place there. Increasingly, we're also looking into, let's say, the use of big data in managing the disease, not necessarily for the authorization of medicines, but also looking at them in terms of early warning signals, allowing the better, more intelligent use of veterinary medicinal products, particularly in livestock farming. So to that extent, we have started a veterinary big data strategy. We've been liaising with our stakeholders, the industry, and with academia as well, in trying to understand what are the developments there. I do know that the industry, livestock farming industry, is very much interested in it, particularly with precision livestock farming. But also, my understanding is that there is an interest from the side of the pharmaceutical industry to move also from treatment more to prevention. That may help, or to use indeed allow intelligent use of data to provide us with different types of information on newer products that could support efficacy and safety. I think those are developments where, of course, we are involved very much. What it will look like in the future, whether AI comes into play, and how we're going to deal with all of that, I don't think anyone can predict. Big data is really growing fast on the human medicine area. I think it's a matter of time for the veterinary medicines arena to follow suit. Over.
There's a next question from Paul on product leaflets on EPAR website for veterinary medicines that are no longer updated for this location, and users are advised to use the UPD public portal.
Jana.
Thank you very much for that question. Yeah, indeed, and we are aware that there's some overlap there with us moving from the EMA corporate website, so the ema.europa.eu pages on the veterinary medicines, to the introduction of the UPD public portal, so the veterinary medicines information website. The short answer is, indeed, we are aware. It is a transition at the moment, so we are trying to gradually update that. So you will see bit by bit, if you indeed keep looking at it, the EPARs disappear from the EMA corporate website. It's a bit of a project to do that, so it's taking a little bit longer than we wanted it to. In any case, on all the EPAR pages, as far as I'm aware, there is a reference to find the latest information on the veterinary medicines information website. So that is also our advice here. You will always find the latest information definitely there, and not anymore in the future, and even currently on the EMA corporate website. So I hope that helps.
Thank you.
We have another question from Carolina Shahil, and apologies if I am mispronouncing your surname. Are you planning to develop clinical practice guidelines to help vets in the field with regards to EMA categories?
Yeah, Jordi, you can take it.
Yeah, hiya, Jordi here. No, I don't think we are planning to do that. And one of the reasons will be that will also need to take into account the availability of medicines on each different member state. So besides being outside of our scope, we think that there are other institutions that will be better placed to do that. I see Nancy nodding, which I appreciate, but it's not the role of the agency to produce guidelines on clinical use. It's never been, I don't think it will be. And then again, availability of veterinary medicines throughout the EU, it's quite different. And the practices change also from one country to another. So any advice we will be producing could be quite controversial. So I think that the colleges of veterinary medicine probably a better place to do this kind of guidance. Thank you.
Nancy, please.
Yes, just to add on that, indeed, that's the reason why usually it's done on a national level. There are quite a lot of guidelines already available, and the World Veterinary Association has a repository of all the different guidelines for different species in different countries. So there you can see that on the website of the World Veterinary Organization, www.worldvet.org. In addition, there are several EU projects that are also dealing with that. So Enovat, for example, is one of them that are making very good guidelines. And later we will also start JAMRE, the second part, and they also will produce guidelines. So there are already quite a few available, but it's very difficult to make them very general because, like it was said, the availability of medicines, but also disease patterns, they really are different from country to country.
Okay. I see no further questions in the chat, but I've got a question here from Ricardo. Ricardo, please.
Yeah, good morning, and thank you very much to all the speakers. It was a question to Martin about the article 138 that you mentioned, and I just wanted to know, is that one where an international organization may ask for an opinion to EMA for authorization of a medicine? And I just wanted to know, it's a matter of curiosity, if there has been any experience before in something like that in human or veterinary medicines, if that has happened before, or which is your opinion on the future of this article? Thank you.
Oh, I risk going through the entire lunchtime if you get me going on this one. So yes, so we have not yet had the experience of using what Article 138. It's not that we're aware of this, and something we're trying to work out the modalities of how it'll happen. It is inspired by Article 58 on the human regulation, and through that is has worked with the World Health Organization, and we have had quite a few products that have been where the CHMP, so that's the Committee for Human Medicines, has given opinions on the use of products for use outside of the European Union, and its products have been approved on the basis of those opinions in about 90 plus countries around the world, primarily in Africa, but also Latin America and some parts of Asia, Southeast Asia. The experience has been extremely positive, and we're beginning to see a movement to parallel applications for products that will be used within the European Union and also outside of the European Union, either with slightly different indications, so endemic as opposed to traveler indications on the human side. So we're seeing more and more move towards that. Picking up on the theme of the academics and the part of the engagement that Ivo is trying to achieve through these 2 days, one of the things we've seen on the Article 58 angle is that many of the products come in through non-traditional product developers. So the product development partnerships includes in many cases academics or not-for-profit sponsors and developers of products, and that's particularly on the neglected tropical diseases and some of the products that for use in low middle income countries. These tend to come from these product development partnerships. So we have good experience. We know it works, and we're seeing some really good interest from countries outside of the European Union to rely and engage with the agency in this assessment. The last point in that, when we do these assessments on the human side, we bring in regulators. It comes back a little bit to the question about training we had earlier on. We bring in regulators from target countries where the product will be used. So we have the CHMP, the World Health Organization experts, plus also experts from target countries. And so we benefit from their local epidemiology and local use experience, but it also doubles as part of a training exercise and capacity building exercise as well. So we'll see how we create and set up Article 138, because the context is a little bit different from Article 58, but we see it having some really interesting possibilities. It's not there quite yet. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, maybe to add to that, I can confirm that we haven't had any requests yet. We're working on a procedure to say, okay, how are we going to deal with this? There's a few caveats with that Article 138. First of all, it says that the assessment should be in line with Article 8. Article 8 meaning that we cannot use a double standard in that sense. So it has to fulfill the requirements of a European dossier, which will be difficult if it originates from outside Europe. That's one thing. Then the other requirement is that it can only be for a product that will never ever be used in Europe, which is also, when you look at market potential, is going to be a bit problematic. Then on top of that, when you look at it in a strict sense, an application can only come from an organization of animal health, so World Organization of Animal Health, which is the WOA or FAO. We could include that as well. Maybe an organization like PANVAC or an organization, the Pan American Organization of Health. Those could indeed submit it to us. And then there's the fee issue. How are we going to deal with that? So there's issues to be resolved there. I can see the attractiveness sometimes, but in reality, it will take some time before we've got it up and running and working. And it's currently what's being experimented upon is the pre-qualification of foot-and-mouth disease and other transboundary diseases. Also a project of FAO, EU FMD, and supported by WOA. And I think this is probably better suited for what is currently demand in the veterinary sector. But let's see how that develops.
On the point about the medicinal products intended exclusively for markets outside the Union, it's similar wording on the human medicine side. But the definition of medicinal products allows for different indications. So it could be the same substance, but with different indications. And so one thing we've seen on the human medicine side has been difference in epidemiology about prevalence and conditions of use. So this is something we've seen on the human medicine side. Has begun to get lots of cogs thinking in the pharmaceutical industry in terms of getting the market, all of the benefits that come with a European Union marketing authorization, and the data protection and those sorts of things, as well as getting an opinion, working with through the international animal health organizations for use outside of the European Union, so that we could actually, in terms of a global animal health impact, there are some interesting avenues, and these are things that we are exploring and seeing how that will work.
Okay, it's 12:15. We've had a long and very interesting session. I would like to thank all the speakers first and foremost, but then also the people that have asked the questions, because we've seen a huge diversity of questions touching upon different aspects. Also, the people in the room here that have contributed to answering the questions, I would like to thank on this. I suggest we break for lunch and we reconvene at 1:30, either through WebEx or here in the room. With that, I would like to close this session. Thank you very much.